It is Thursday morning, and this show commonly has CERN Basher on Thursday morning. And golly darn, looky there, here he is.
Good morning, Randy. How are you?
I'm well, CERN, and how about yourself?
Fantastic, thank you.
Well, good. I am always glad to hear that, and I understand that you plan to regale us this morning.
I do. And having survived a little hurricane that came through this way this past weekend, we had about 15 inches of rain.
Oh, 15 inches of rain.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel.
So if your house doesn't flood after 15 inches of rain, that's probably a good sign.
Man, that's a lot of rain.
Yeah.
Have you been through many hurricanes before?
That's my second one.
It's your second one. Okay. And was this one accompanied by 80-mile-an-hour winds or?
No, actually, I think it was probably downgraded to a tropical storm by the time it actually hit us.
Gotcha.
But we had a good 3 days of rain.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Exciting.
But, more important than that.
Okay.
Well, not more important. I mean, I survived it, so that's good. But let me just share with you this. Today was going to be an amazing day.
That's right.
And it still could be an amazing day, but we're not going to have this Robotaxi unveil event.
So I know you're always trying to do comedy. Is that why you've got that weird face on the right there?
Well, there's this guy that put a show out about this, or a video out about this. And so I thought I would feature him here in my first slide.
Yeah. All right.
You might know this guy. He looks a lot like you, Randy.
Oh yeah. A doppelganger.
Could be. Could be. You know how a lot of us on X have people that try to pretend that they are us.
That's right. That's right.
This could be the same guy on YouTube. Some guy. Yeah. But anyway, happy 8/8, Randy.
Yes. And now we look forward to 10/10, and that's only 63 days away. So
that's right. Everything seems to be just 63 days away. Yeah. Well, so not to disappoint, let's unveil a new product.
Oh yeah.
This is an idea for the next gen Model S.
I see.
And, it looks pretty cool. There might be a few refinements to make. But, I like it.
Yeah. It's in the style. It's a let's just say yielding to kind of the stylistic ways that various cars are going right now. I don't find it to be particularly newish or breaking any ground, but it's a nice look.
Yeah. Well, we'll discuss vehicles breaking ground here in just a second, but
Okay.
But yeah, I thought that was kind of neat. So the other thing that happened this week, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, is what happened in the financial markets on Monday.
Yeah.
I think you've probably talked a lot about this.
Oh
and
yeah.
What I'd like to do here is get our political cartoons out of the way early in this series of slides. So I thought this was a particularly good one. What's that ringing? The opening bell.
Yeah, right.
And the reason I want to get the political cartoons out early is we've got so much important stuff to talk about today.
Okay.
Okay, so here's another one. The bull is knocking on the door of the Fed with the bears and pitchforks coming for him.
Yes, and I think there would be Siegel. Jeremy Siegel would be the guy with the pitchfork or the one with the flames. I'm not sure which.
That's right. Yep. Let's have a 75 basis point cut right now.
That's right.
Yep. And then I thought this was kind of cute. Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Panic and FOMO. That's a particularly good one. That seems like that's one that we could show almost every month or something.
Exactly.
That's an evergreen cartoon if I ever saw one.
Yeah.
And finally, this one.
Oh yeah.
And this is, the bull and the bear and the vehicle and the twisty, curvy road ahead. More than twisty, curvy. It's quite jagged. But this actually sort of foreshadows the next slide.
Oh, okay.
But before we leave this one, it's pretty clear to me that the bull and the bear are pretty advanced. They're driving some kind of autonomous vehicle.
Oh yeah. Oh.
The bull is looking out the window and the bear is on his phone.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't look like a Tesla, but my guess is it probably is.
Maybe it's the new version, the new.
Could be the CyberCab.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
And it's kind of
two-
interesting because the vehicle's off the ground.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the normal state of things these days. I don't know if you saw this video from Whistling Diesel.
I have.
Yeah, quite entertaining. Not the best, structure of tests in the world, but very entertaining.
Yes, very entertaining.
And I must say I'm impressed by the amount of air that the Cybertruck achieved here.
Yes.
I won't be doing this in mine.
Probably not, huh?
This is not a real world test that I was particularly interested in.
Yeah, but it should be giving some of the TV producers some ideas of potential future films.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, this thing flew beautifully. In fact, I was very impressed. Contrast that with the Ford F-150, and it didn't really fly.
Right.
Now, we don't know for sure whether the speed of the Ford was the same as the Cybertruck going over the hump, but I assume that was close.
Right.
We don't know that. And I thought this test was kind of fun. The Cybertruck made it over these giant pipes.
Uh-huh.
I don't know about you, but I don't encounter too many road surfaces like this in my daily driving.
No.
Even here in Florida, where we have a lot of hurricanes and there's a lot of water, we do have a lot of pipes, but you don't typically have to drive over them like this.
Yes. Exposed, yes.
Yeah. And further in the video, the Cybertruck comes off of this and slams its tailgate on that big square concrete bar there.
Yeah.
That seemed to be the undoing of the truck from that point forward.
Right.
But the Ford F-150 couldn't even drive over the pipes. So
I see. I didn't. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Got stuck.
Yeah, I think Tesla's probably going to have to completely redesign the Cybertruck in order to take care of the rear end landing on a concrete, obstruction of some kind. Yeah.
No doubt. No doubt. They're going to have to recall every single one and redo that.
Yeah.
Every one of them. Yeah.
NISTA, I hope they're not listening.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, on a more serious note, we got an update just yesterday, I believe it was, about the safety of Tesla's vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from Omid. He works for Tesla. And the first line of his post here is 1.6 billion cumulative miles have been driven with FSD supervised. Now, this wasn't new information. This was put in the earnings report.
Uh-huh.
So that's not new, but it was interesting that he included it here. Anyway, we'll come back to that in a second.
Okay.
But he's saying that in the second quarter of this year, that they recorded one crash for every 6.88 million miles driven, in which drivers were using autopilot technology.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And for vehicles that were not using autopilot technology, there was one crash for every 1.45 million miles driven.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a big difference.
Right.
And then for comparison purposes, in the US, there's an automobile crash approximately every 670,000 miles.
Right.
So just being in a Tesla is more than twice as safe as being in a non-Tesla in the US.
Right.
And then the fact that, if you use autopilot technology, which comes standard now on every Tesla since 2014, I believe, makes Teslas much, much safer.
10 times. I could
10
do
times.
I could do the math there.
Well, so yes, you're actually getting ahead of me by a couple of
Oh,
slides.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So this is the data graphed out, and they report on a quarterly basis. And the challenge with anything that's quarterly is you've potentially got some seasonality to deal with.
Right.
Right. Now, driving conditions in Florida are probably pretty much the same in the winter as they are in the summer, with the exception of hurricanes.
Yeah, with the major exception.
But in most of the country, winter conditions are very different than summer conditions.
Yes.
So accident rates and so on could be more seasonal. So what it's really good to do is kind of smooth it out and look at rolling 12 months.
I gotcha. Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, you'll also see some pretty nice trends, right? The top line, the green line, is the crash data that was we just discussed,
Yes.
smoothed out over 12 months. And you can see that it's gone from an accident every 3 million miles now to almost one accident for 7 million miles,
Right.
6.88.
Right.
So autopilot technology has made Tesla's vehicles more than twice as safe in just 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty significant improvement. Now, the question is, why is the yellow line kind of gradually trending down?
Right.
I suspect that as Tesla sells more and more vehicles, that initially people that bought Teslas were people that probably were safer drivers. They could afford an expensive car,
Mm-hmm.
and they would probably be more careful about how they drive that expensive car. But now that Teslas have gotten cheaper, more widespread, that maybe we're getting, a more of a general pool of drivers that maybe weren't as quite as safe as some of the earlier drivers might have been.
So, and this will be counter to the next one, the red line, which is actually showing improvement. But there has been the number of accidents. There's been at least a lot of reporting that the number of accidents went up during COVID, and didn't come back down after COVID. So I'm surprised to see that it's trending upward. This appeared to have a lot to do with distracted driving and whatnot, where I'm confused by the red line, less confused by the yellow line. I might have expected the yellow line because of that, because it would have impacted everybody. But the red line going up is the surprising one.
Yeah, and I think it's also true that a lot of other automakers are including safety features in their vehicles too.
Right.
Right. So we've got some of that going on. But certainly it's the green line that's the impressive one here.
Right. And that's not even FSD, that's just autopilot.
Well, maybe. We'll get to that in just a second.
Okay.
Once again, you're a couple of slides ahead of me, Randy.
See, there you go.
Yeah. Anyway, here is the same data, but just compared to the red line. So the red line now becomes relative to itself.
Okay.
Right. So something relative to itself is just 1.
Right.
Right. Now we're comparing the yellow line, which is Teslas with no autopilot engaged, relative to that red line. And so it's gone from 3 times as safe down to about 2 times as safe.
I see. Okay.
Okay. But the green line shows that we're almost 10 times safer.
Right.
In a Tesla with autopilot technology versus any other vehicle on average. Okay. And that's been a pretty good improvement. Here maybe is the I don't know. I mean, here's pandemic, I guess 2020, and here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure really what explains these little dips.
Yeah.
But anyway, over a 5-year period, 6 times as safe up to almost 10 times as safe. Okay. James Dalma, I thought, had a nice way of putting it. He says, your quarterly reminder that robots are getting better and humans aren't. When he's talking about the same data. So I thought that was a clever way to put it. For those that love numbers, here's the data kind of trying to put in a table format that I had developed last week. The national average essentially is 1.5 accidents per million miles.
Okay.
Okay. A manually driven Tesla with no autopilot features is 0.69 accidents per million miles. Okay. And over the course of a day or a year, that doesn't seem to matter, but over the course of a 90-year lifetime, you would expect 1 accident in a Tesla over your lifetime versus 2 in a non-Tesla. That's kind of the magnitude of the difference.
Okay.
Okay. And I guess if you have had more accidents than that, then, you're not an average or above average driver. Here's Tesla with autopilot. it's 1.5 accidents per 10 million,
10 million
miles, or 0.15 accidents per million. You should expect 0.2 accidents in a 90-year lifetime.
Right, right.
Okay, so that's the difference in terms of over human life. And I think that's something that most people can understand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, ultimately, Tesla with FSD needs to get to 1 accident per probably 100 million miles, so that there's virtually no chance of any accident during an average human life. That's where we're headed, and that's why Tesla needs to invest so much money in compute.
Sure.
For the foreseeable future. Okay. So Omar posted this. He said the average car in the US crashes 10 times more often per mile than a Tesla with FSD on under human supervision. And being the eagle eye that I am, I corrected him. Right? And I said, Omar, the data is just for autopilot, not FSD. And he actually came back and said, autopilot refers to both autopilot and FSD in this case.
I see.
Okay. Now, I've tried to get Tesla to confirm this. I haven't had any luck getting anybody from Tesla to respond yet.
Yeah.
And maybe I won't, but this is interesting. And Omar probably knows better than anybody else whether this includes FSD data or not.
Huh. Well, yeah. Well, that'd be really good information to know, and strange that they would be so obtuse about it.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you get into further details. If you follow the links, this is from Tesla's website. They talk about they're engineered to be the safest cars in the world. The S, the 3, the X, and the Y have achieved among the lowest overall probability of injury of any vehicles ever tested by the U.S. government, New Car Assessment Program. And they low center of gravity, large crumple zones, exceptional strength, and because of their strength, Tesla's battery packs rarely incur serious damage and accidents. And they talk about fires, and we'll get to that in just a second. Active safety features come standard with all Tesla vehicles made after September of 2014. And more than 9 billion miles have been driven with autopilot engaged. Now, we know 1.6 of that is FSD.
Okay.
Right? Because that was the start of the first tweet. So it's quite possible that this data does include FSD. And so looking at this quarter to quarter may actually become more meaningful as FSD becomes a larger percentage.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm here today to announce to you that we need to follow this maybe a little more closely than we had before.
Right.
Okay. And then, as you know, over the year software updates, they're able to introduce safety measures and enhancements long after a car has been delivered. That's one of the hallmarks of owning a Tesla is your car gets better and better with time.
Right.
I don't know that I've ever owned any other vehicle where I could have said that.
I'm 100% positive you can say that without reservation.
Yeah. Further, at the very bottom of Tesla's page on all this, they say to ensure our statistics are conservative, we count any crash in which autopilot was deactivated within 5 seconds before impact. So again, if you think about FSD and you're using FSD and you take control, and if you have a crash anywhere between then and 5 seconds from then, that could count as a crash.
Yeah, even though you're now in control, Tesla's still counting that as an FSD crash.
Yeah, and to their credit, they're counting that, so that's good.
Yep.
And they say we do not differentiate based on the type of crash or fault. For example, more than 35% of all autopilot crashes occur when the Tesla vehicle is rear-ended by another vehicle. Right. So
because it doesn't stop at the stop sign. I mean, because it does stop at the stop sign.
Right. Yeah. How many of those are at stop signs? Right. Or not running a red light, maybe.
Right.
All right. So that's that. And the reaction from my Cybertruck is some googly eyes at all that. If you want a cheap way of dressing up your Cybertruck, this is one way to do it.
There you go. As soon as we get ours, I'll make sure that that we add those.
Yeah. All right. So let's continue on the FSD theme. Elon talks about FSD needing to be safer than a human.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I put this table together and put in the data that we just talked about in terms of, well, sorry, this is different. The data in the middle in blue is accident data. And it comes from NHTSA. And if you count reported accidents, there's 1.82 reported accidents per 1 million miles driven.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when there are 3.3 trillion miles driven in the country, it adds up to a lot of accidents.
Yes.
Okay. And a lot of people suspect that actually the rate of accidents is higher, maybe by 100%. There's a lot of unreported accidents.
Yeah.
So that's that first blue line, 3.64 accidents per million miles driven.
Okay.
So if you use those two kind of as a band, then again, over a human lifetime of 90 years, you could expect to have between 2 and maybe 5 accidents.
Right. Now we could be pretty sure that the half that are not reported are of a minor, almost all of a minor nature.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yep. Sure. And again, this is not Tesla data. This is just all vehicles in the United States.
No, I get it, but I mean,
Yep.
I'm sure you can think of all the situations.
Yes.
It's a minor accident. We don't want to report it. It's a hit and run, but it's still minor. So even the driver doesn't report, the driver that was hit doesn't report it. I mean, it's a single automobile. You run into a pole and you don't bother to talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, people may have heard about this concept of reliability in the March of Nines. So in this table, I wanted to show what that looks like. Right. So if you go to the top row, if you had one accident every 10 miles, then 90% of your driving is reliable.
Right.
Right. If you have one accident per 100 miles, then now 99% of your driving. So this is where the March of Nines comes. So as you move down this table and your accident rate decreases, your reliability increases.
Mm-hmm.
And so based on the data we have today from the US government, human drivers in the United States are 99.9996 or 98% reliable.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, but it's still 2 to 5 accidents in a human lifetime.
Right.
For robotaxi to really be effective and for people to trust it, it needs to be safer than that. And I'm suggesting that it needs to be essentially 6 or 8 nines safe, 9.999999%. The last row on this table.
Right.
One accident per 100 million miles would be the ideal, or a target to go for.
Okay. I'm thinking that I'll just clap back a bit. I think if Tesla decided they could never get there, or that it might take another 5 years to get there, I think they would be happy with 5 or with 7 nines as opposed to 8 nines.
Sure. No, I think there are a lot of accidents that could happen even in a robotaxi world where the cars are behaving perfectly.
Yes.
That are just completely beyond Tesla's control.
Yes, and again, you got to take into consideration that, say, roughly half of the accidents that Tesla's involved in now are caused by somebody else.
Yeah.
So you can't get rid of those necessarily, except by avoidance, and the avoidance would be great, and might contribute to the stats. But at the end, what I think you're really concerned about in a robotaxi world is the accidents caused by the Tesla, or that could have been avoided if there was a human driver.
Yeah. Now, longer term, there is some potential for potentially vehicle-to-vehicle communication that would make other vehicles hitting each other almost impossible.
Right.
Or even software in human-driven vehicles that make them more crash-proof.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The vehicle's like, oh my gosh, the human's trying to drive me into a tree. I'm not going to let him drive me into a tree. I'm going to assume he doesn't want to hit the tree. Right.
Unfortunately, when you get into those situations, it turns out the human was trying to avoid running into a human. That's why it was going to run into a tree, but the
Well, maybe.
computer,
Yeah. Yeah. So there are definitely some strange issues that would be encountered. But this is sort of why I say that I think Tesla will be investing in compute for a long time to come and trying to improve FSD for a long, long time.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't think they need to be 8 nines reliable to start robotaxi.
Right.
Just better than a human is the bar, and right immediately you're going to start saving lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So ultimately, Tesla will have data on their side.
And I'm not 100% sure. I think if we try to really take a look at what's going on with the cars that people are driving now, I think what I think we're dealing with is going to be the creature comfort aspect, making sure that it operates, well, and that people feel safe in it. The business of the not having all the features finished yet, like reverse, and then the occasional stupid move. So I think if they can, based on the stats that we're seeing, if you eliminate the stupid moves, I think you're ready to roll.
Yeah, and I also think that various municipalities and jurisdictions everywhere can do a better job probably with road signage and even road layout.
Yes.
I saw somebody, I think maybe Dylan Loomis did an FSD drive that he highlighted, and he was driving on a road where the vehicle needed to move to the right and then move to the left in order to go through.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a terrible road design. You should have the vehicle be able to drive straight through. You shouldn't have to make people change lanes all the time.
Yes.
Right. Just little things like that.
Sure.
It would make it a lot safer. And then, of course, there's all those places where the signs are hard to see or they're in weird locations.
I've thought for a long time that this is actually something that Tesla should be doing proactively already. Maybe they do, but they have more information about this than anybody in terms of the accidents, in terms of where the problems are. And it would seem like they could just have almost an automated system of notifying municipalities when they run into these situations.
Yeah.
Run into.
Well, funny you mentioned that, Randy, because that's a perfect segue to this picture.
Okay.
The Howard County Police Department in Maryland released a video of red light runners.
Oh.
And that white truck there is running a red light. The traffic hasn't just started going across, it's been going across. So he just runs the red light and keeps going.
Yeah.
And there's several examples of this in the video. And so this is something that FSD won't do.
Yes.
It's highly unlikely to be running red lights.
Right.
Okay, not just lights that change, but lights that are red for a while and people just ignore it for whatever reason or distracted and don't see it.
Sure.
Keep going through. Now, this guy actually had to turn and avoid traffic in order to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like he was, asleep at the wheel or anything. So Brett Winton had a post about this yesterday, and he says human drivers run a red light about every 3,000 miles.
Wow.
Right. So eliminate that, and suddenly road safety improves pretty dramatically just from that one factor.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes the point that if FSD doesn't run a red light at least once every 3 months or so, then it's actually performing better than the average human.
Immediately. Yeah. And of course, everybody has the obvious list of the computer will never be looking at his phone. It will never be drunk. All of those things.
And then this point here where he says this sort of discrepancy could go part of the way to explaining the difference between the intervention rate on FSD on the community tracker that we talked about last week, which is like once every 300 miles.
Right.
And Elon's commentary on measured critical error rates, 1 accident per year.
Right.
Right. So Elon's saying one thing and we're seeing another thing. And he's like, well, this might help explain some of that. All right. Enough of that. I'm using Cybertruck pictures today as my transition points from one topic to the next instead of the cartoons. Because I've got so many great Cybertruck images today.
Yeah.
I generally try to keep all 4 wheels on the ground, but this I thought was a nice shot.
Yeah.
All right. Furthering our discussion on safety. Fires.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem to suffer from the misconception that EVs are a fire risk.
Right.
That's one of the key sort of
Yeah.
FUD points that's out there. So let's look at some data. This is from Tesla.
Okay.
Okay. Tesla vehicles in blue and US average. And again, this is million miles driven before a fire event.
Okay.
The blue line
Can barely see those gray lines.
Barely see the gray lines.
Yes.
The blue line is out here on the right. It's approaching 140 million miles before fire.
Okay.
The gray line is all the way over here on the left, and it's under 20 million.
I see. Yeah.
Okay. So by my rough math, that means that Tesla is 7 times less likely to be in have a fire event than any other vehicle.
Okay.
So, and that's been pretty consistent. And in fact, you can see it's actually been improving over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The blue lines are extending out to the right.
Well, I don't think there's not going to be any difference between the number of people that drop the cigarette in their lap. But when we're talking about fires and accidents or fires in specific situations that are not related to the human error, that's where I guess Tesla would shine. Yeah,
let's dive into that a little bit deeper. So I'm actually calling this out and saying Tesla is probably being too conservative here.
Right.
There's actually, according to Kelley Blue Book, which is based on a study that they looked at, I think from some insurance entity, that EVs there were 25 fires for every 100,000 sold. Now they're not looking at miles, they're looking at the number sold. I don't really know what this means, but maybe it's the total number, in EVs in the country or something. I don't think they're looking at sold in any given year. I think it's just over time.
Right.
But they're saying comparatively, there are 1,530 gasoline-powered vehicles and 3,475 hybrid vehicles involved in fires for every 100,000 sold.
Wow.
So by this math, EVs are 60 times less likely to catch fire than ICE vehicles and 140 times less likely to catch fire than hybrids.
Well, where are the headlines on the hybrids? Maybe we could just kill off all the hybrids with that one thing.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? So that's very different. 60 and 140 are very different than 7.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm asking, where's the discrepancy in the data? Well, for one thing, Tesla includes causes of fire that are unrelated to the vehicle. Right. So here's a quote from Tesla. Because Tesla's data includes fire events that are caused by structure fires, wildfires, arson, and other causes unrelated to the vehicle. Right. So it makes Tesla's numbers, again, very conservative.
So if your house burns down with your Tesla in it, that counts. If somebody throws a Molotov cocktail in your window, that counts.
That's right.
Okay.
So at minimum, EVs are 7 times less likely to catch fire. And it may be much higher than that.
And we should say probably in the United States, that statistic should be Teslas, not even EVs, because there's so few others on the road with any serious numbers of miles driven.
That's correct. Yeah, I think that's safe to say. And certainly we know of some other EV makers that have had fire problems.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Right. Okay. So in terms of FUD, this was again kind of a fun video from Tucker Carlson.
Yes.
He did this Cybertruck review. Gave the truck to one of his neighbors to test out for a few days. And it's a fun video. But they did get around to talking about fires. And this guy, this is a friend of his, the guy that he lent the truck to. He's talking about fire risk, and he says she's about to burn up, and he's kind of joking around. But he concludes that he doesn't really want to have a Cybertruck, parked in his garage that may be next to his bedroom.
Right.
That just seems too risky to him.
Yes.
Now, this is an aerial view of the guy's house. If this doesn't say fire hazard, then I don't know what does. Look at the piles of logs.
That's absolutely hilarious.
And all the equipment, and they actually did a little tour of his barn. You should see the stuff in his barn. Yeah, so if this doesn't spell fire risk, I don't know what does. There are piles of logs in his
Oh,
yard,
gosh.
not too far from his buildings. There's old trucks and equipment and a
Uh,
barn full of equipment. And yet he's worried about the Cybertruck catching fire.
That's phenomenal.
Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny, but it just goes to show the level of misunderstanding about all this.
Right.
Now, here's an image of a Cybertruck doing some real work. We have definitively discovered that the Cybertruck can carry 4 98-inch TVs. So if you're holding off on a Cybertruck purchase because you wonder whether you can fit 4 TVs, probably from Costco in the back of your truck, you can. You can go ahead and make your purchase.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yep. So that was great. All right. We talked about semi recently, and I thought this was a great chart of showing why electrifying semis is so important. They account for only 1% of the vehicles in the US, but 20% of the emissions from vehicles.
Right.
And 36% of particulate emissions, the
Because
stuff
of
that's not particularly healthy for humans.
brake dust and other things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also added semi to this chart that you and I have talked about. So this should look quite familiar to your regular viewers, but the semi line here, the second line, is new. I don't know what they'll sell the semi for. I've put it in at a couple $100,000.
I think there's a real possibility. The range, I would say, would be between 150 and 250. And that might also depend on all the, what the features are on any particular truck, might even go above that 250. But being under 150 would be dumb because that's kind of what you pay for an ICE vehicle. And being over 250 would be great because of the margins, but not sure the market will bear.
Yeah, so we'll see. This estimated profit here of 22,000, I'm assuming 20% gross margins.
Okay.
And I've got 18.5% gross margins on the auto side. So pretty, a little bit higher than the auto business.
Right.
But you can see that when you put that into the vehicle equivalents, because it's got such a larger battery size, that it's like selling half a vehicle.
Right.
But again, semi is a good thing to do. It's consistent with Tesla's mission and would certainly also improve the health of people in the country.
Well, and with this particular chart, you're talking about how it is with regard to battery usage. But if you take a look at it in terms of profit per unit, it's right there in front of us. It's over 5 times the profit per unit. Well, almost exactly, actually, 5 times in your analysis of profit per unit. So it's like the 50,000 that they're going to make in Reno would be like opening a new car factory for 250,000 cars.
Right. Now, when I first put this out there, I got some feedback from some people thought that gross profit margin of 20% was too low.
I think so.
So if you doubled it, this is what it would look like, and you get almost on par with autos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I think 40% gross margin is a bit of a stretch for me for the semi.
I think so.
But just to show the range.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And again, just to show that the prize is down here on this chart, robotaxi and bots.
Exactly.
And also, if we think about it, there is an opportunity longer term for robo-trucking.
Yes.
Right. And that might be an interesting business opportunity for Tesla as well. And that would put the semi down into the robotaxi kind of range in terms of profit opportunity.
So I wouldn't even, I could be completely wrong on this, but I don't think this will be long range. I think that given the timing of the semi truck coming out, not until late 25 or probably into 26 before they start shipping in any quantity, I would be surprised. I guess not shocked. I would be surprised plus almost to the level of shocked if they didn't already offer because it's so much more important on the semi than it is on the regular vehicles.
Yeah. Yep. So we shall see. Here's a beautiful collection of Cybertrucks out in the wild. This is what they look like when they're hanging out together.
What do we call a group of cyber trucks? Is it a herd? Is it, I don't know.
It could be a giga of trucks.
A
Could
giga.
be, yeah. There's all kinds of good names I've seen. Randy, how many gasoline vehicles were sold in Norway in July?
Probably not very many.
Well, you can count them on this page.
Oh, that's it. The
Yeah.
ones that you said.
And I'll save you the time. It's 95.
Oh my gosh.
Here's the list. 95
Wow.
passenger vehicles were sold in Norway that had only internal combustion engines.
Wow.
Now, this excludes camper vans, so there's a few more there, but this is
Okay.
cars.
Okay.
Okay. Many manufacturers sold one vehicle.
Wow.
Ford Mustang sold one. Porsche 911, they sold two last month.
Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but I reported this morning that China is now 51% new vehicles or hybrids combined with BEVs.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have that chart today, but yeah. And actually, sorry, I misspoke on the Porsche 911. I guess there's a few different types here that maybe they sold five or six. Porsches are doing well in Norway.
Very well, very well. Yeah.
Yeah. So here is the trend in Norway.
Wow.
Battery electric in July, 92% of vehicles sold, and accounts for 84% so far in 2024.
Yeah, the hybrids actually gained a little bit. I don't know what's going on with the hybrids. We just got to get that news about the fire risk.
Yeah. Well, I guess they'll burn up in time. It's a terrible joke.
Terrible. Yeah. We'll forgive you.
Here is a picture of future Tesla investors collecting their dividends. I guess if you have a Cybertruck on the farm and the grain truck is not around, then the Cybertruck could capture a few bushels.
Iowa gold. Yeah.
I didn't see in the spec list how many bushels the Cybertruck can hold.
There was and there was another shot of a Tesla, I think, being loaded with grain the other day, or maybe that was part of was that part of the one with Tucker on it? Did they show it?
No, I don't think it was part of that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so interesting.
Yeah. Okay, Randy, it turns out that making EVs is a terrible business. And we've discussed this chart before from AJ, and this is an updated one through Q2. Tesla is the only pure EV maker that has made positive cash flow over its lifetime.
Right.
And they too went through this, we'll call it the valley of death.
Sure. And
came out the other side. And at the worst point, they were down. The scale here seems to be, I guess it's about right. They lost about $10 billion at the worst point. And this is also a time scale. So that was, year like between 8 and 9.
Right.
Well, we've got some other companies that are breaking records and not in a good way.
Yeah.
We've got Lucid now that has lost $10 billion. And Rivian is winning the prize here. Rivian has lost almost 22 billion.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, before we go there's one other company that may be a bigger money loser, and that's Uber. They have an accumulated deficit, basically negative retained earnings of about $30 billion. So, it could be interesting to see whether they'll ever make that money back.
Exactly. Well, they've turned the corner at least.
They've turned the corner, perhaps. Yes.
Perhaps.
Yeah. So I don't want to pick on any particular company, but Lucid is a good example as to why these EV makers are suffering. And AJ makes it really easy to understand this. So here's a few charts I'd like to share with you on Lucid. And these charts are through the end of the second quarter. The average selling price for Lucid has come down from over $200,000 per vehicle, now down to $84,000. Right, and some cheaper model, et cetera.
Sure.
So that's great. They're bringing the selling price of the vehicle down. So on the surface of it, you say, okay, fantastic. They must be doing something right. Well, yes, But the production cost of that vehicle they're selling for $84,000 still cost them $196,000. So they really, if they want to break even, just at the gross profit level, that vehicle should be selling for $196,000.
Right.
They would still lose money because there's other expenses the company has,
Sure.
right? But, I guess you could say they've made progress on this, but is it enough?
Yeah.
Right. And then here's the average loss per vehicle. Now it's been shrinking.
Yeah.
Yes. But the loss is still greater than what they're selling the vehicle for. They are selling it for 84,000, but losing 113. Right. Now, I don't know what business school the CFO went to, but I'm pretty sure that's not a sustainable strategy.
Well, it is, as long as the Saudis will keep digging into their pockets to keep them going.
Sure. Yeah. It's not a sustainable strategy, even with that. And then here's the gross margin. Anytime your gross margin is lower than negative 100%, it's not a good place to be. Right? Is it ever, will it be ever possible for this company to make money?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
It's hard to imagine. And I was looking at the Rivian information too. Maybe you're going to show the Rivian also, but it's even hard to imagine that they think they're going to be profitable in Q4.
Yeah, well, it turns out Rivian is getting a bunch of regulatory credits.
Oh, okay.
That will help, and that's great, right? And that may in the end help save them.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also some non-cash charges that help them as well in terms of stock compensation and stuff like that. But we'll have to see. I hope Rivian makes it.
Yeah,
I really do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tough. It's really tough. Yeah, I don't have those charts here today. Maybe next week we can talk about Rivian a little bit.
Okay.
But this is a business model for Lucid that is not sustainable, even with a deep-pocketed investor.
Yeah.
One of two things will happen: is they'll get tired of funneling money into the company and just watching it burn, or they'll end up basically just owning the company and then doing with it what they want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. At some point, they might consider changing the management. I don't know. Boeing finally figured that out, but we'll see if Lucid ever does.
And Peter Rawlington in his conference call was sort of joking a little bit about that.
Oh.
If you look at the transcript, about how the Saudis sort of may tire of him as the CEO. He was saying it in a joking way, but obviously it's on his mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Another transition point, another Cybertruck doing real work, carrying a nice load of lumber. I don't know how much this weighs, but it looks pretty heavy to me. It looks like a decent amount of wood.
Yeah.
I hope that it's safely tied down. Looks like it is. Maybe. But it's time to think ahead to Tesla's third quarter.
Uh-huh.
And this Cybertruck is perfect because it's got the number 3 on the side.
There you go. Is it number 3 for a reason?
I don't know.
No. Okay.
Yeah, for all I know, it could be a NASCAR driver and his race car number. I don't know whose Cybertruck this is, but it does look sharp.
Well, if we're going to talk about the third quarter, maybe we should take a break real quick, and we'll continue with this probably on Saturday for those of you who want to keep note or push notify so that you can be notified of when the third quarter numbers will be unveiled. And for today, though, let's call it a day. And as always, CERN, so crazy, interesting stuff. In particular, the safety and the fire stuff. Man, there's got to be a way to get this out to the folks. I just don't understand how this is not. I mean, I drove a Volvo for 12 years. I just sold it, and there was a reason I drove a Volvo. Part of it was the safest car around. They had that reputation for years, and a lot of people bought them for that reason. But I don't think that is getting through to the moms out there. So anyway,
It needs to, and of course, the conceptions about fire risk, I think are also a big issue. I mean, I've heard a lot of people mention that just in conversations with me.
Yes, I've even had a fire chief. I was at a meeting, a Rotary meeting, and the fire chief came up to me. I was presenting about Tesla. He came up to me afterwards. He says, "Yeah, but you know, these fires, they take so long to put out." And I'm like, yeah, it's such a rarity.
Right.
Anyway, okay, well, let's move on then. And thank you, sir, as always, for coming on. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.
Thanks, Randy.